Afternoon, good afternoon. What a privilege it is for me, Laura Nobles Banks Reed, to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my life story. It all began, almost 100 years ago, on June the 29th, 1921, born in Barrio Anita, Tucson, Arizona. My mother and her sister moved to Tucson because we had an uncle that had moved to Tucson years ago and had talked my father into coming to Tucson. This is brand new territory, brand new land, an opportunity for a brand new start. And so he gathered our family. I wasn't born then, from Bogalusa, Louisiana, and we moved to Tucson. My uncle was Uncle Sam. He worked for the government, had dogs, a crew of dogs that he used, I guess, for something in trying to work on criminals or whatever it was. But he was noted throughout Tucson for his use and ownership of this group of dogs. But anyway, he talked his brothers into moving to Tucson. And there were nine of those Nobles brothers, nine of them. Now, not all nine moved to Tucson, but at least five or six of them did. And my father was one of the younger ones. And they all somehow decided to move in the Anita area. There's a ditch right behind my uncle's house. Uncle Sam was the one at the time. And that's where I learned to swim. And he had five daughters, and all of us attended the University of Arizona. So we have a legacy of Nobles students that attended the University of Arizona. And most of us did graduate and stayed there. Others moved away and went on about their lives. But anyway, Tucson was home. And I don't know how my mom and dad decided they were going to be realtors, but they did because we owned three apartments right next to our large, we had a huge home there at 1041 Anita. And we owned three apartments that we usually kept rented. And I remember particularly during World War II when the soldiers had no place to stay, mother took them in. And if we had an apartment that was empty, they could stay in that apartment and know that they would be comfortable and safe. But my mother was a trailblazer. She was an organizational person. She's the one that started me off. She was active with the NACP, with her Masonic Lodge, and she used to drag me along with her. And I think that's where I got most of my interest in trying to do something to help other people, because it seems as I review my life that I've always been that kind of person. If I have something, or if I'm somewhere, I'm going to open the door that another Black person can come in. And I have actually done that in so many respects. But anyway, that was kind of the business, the beginning. And my auntie lived right next door to my mother, and her daughter was Myrtle, and I was 3 days older than Myrtle, so we were drawn to get by together by the hip. We did almost everything together, except she was not an organizational person. And I don't know, since I was a young girl, I was always involved in some kind of club or doing something that would help other people. Myrtle was the one that got married first and had five children. I got married later. I never had children, but I've always tried to do things to help other people's children. But our lives intertwined, and we just stuck together through the time that God called her home. And then Anita Street was the street that most of the Nobles men hung out, because there was Sam Nobles and John Nobles and one other Nobles right now that slips my mind, because Anita Street and the street that bordered us, that was really behind us, was Constant Avenue. And my grandmother lived, Mary Jane Noble. She had a big home on Constant Street. So that little area, they used to call it Noblesville because it looked like every year or something was going on with one of those Nobles children or the Nobles family. And there were nothing but mostly Mexican Americans and the few blacks that, and I know four, my grandmother lived on Constant, my Uncle Sam, and then Uncle John, and then my dad, James Nobles. So we were all in that same area, and really just kind of took over. We taught the Mexicans how to speak English instead of me learning how to speak Spanish early on. I should have really been very good in speaking Spanish, but I was there teaching them how to speak English. But anyway, it was just a really wonderful community where everyone looked out for each other, and we felt safe, and we were finding things to do, even up to the point as we got older. There was a lady by the name of Mrs. White, and she had on the corner of Anita and Speedway a barbecue place. And that is where most of us learned how to jitterbug. She had a great big cement slab out there. And on Saturdays, we all, just a whole group of us from that neighborhood, would go over to Mrs. White's cement slab and jitterbug and just have a wonderful time. It was a community that loved each other and supported each other. And I think that is so important in life. And now I just wonder how much of that is even available to do. I doubt whether very much is, because with so many different things that have popped up to make us more fearful, we don't even take the chances like we did. Because we were 10 or 11 o'clock at night, you could see a group of us holding hands and singing and walking down Anita Street or crossing the railroad track, because we were very close to Horry Park and where Dunbar School is. So Dunbar was just a stone's throw from my house. It took me 10 minutes to go to school for the 9 years that I went there. But those were wonderful, wonderful days. And that's a whole story by itself. But anyway, getting back, my dad worked for Southern Pacific Railroad Company for almost 40 years. He was a Boilermaker helper. And with that job, he was able to get passes for us. And my mother used to travel, and I could just remember every summer, Dad would get a pass for us, and Mother would fix a big basket of chicken and this, that, and the other. And most of our aunties and uncles all lived here in Texas and in Louisiana. I had no idea that I'd spend my senior years in Texas. If somebody had told me that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I said, you got to be kidding, right? You got to. I was born in Tucson, and this is where I expect to expire. But I have, since I lived in Tucson, I have visited 4 countries in Africa, 13 countries in Europe, and I've just traveled all over the world, because being an organizational person and active in whatever organization that I decided to just spend my time, when they had travel opportunities, I was one of the first to sign up. But my mother, I think, gave that to us, because when Dad used to give us a pass every year, we would get ready and on that SP, Southern Pacific Railroad Company, and off we would go. And those are just days that I shall always remember. And I know that it is part of what has made me enjoy traveling and doing the travel that I did later on in life. So anyway, Dunbar, when I started thinking about Dunbar, it was segregated, of course. We only had one school from the kindergarten through the ninth grade. We were segregated for years. But we had some of the best teachers that any school organization could have. And they let us know, said, and they told us all about segregation. Said, we're here, we're all at Dunbar. And this, I don't care whether you were in the first grade or whether you were in the ninth, because Dunbar did go through from 1 to 9. And then later on, when we started being able to attend Tucson High, well, we were able to do the 10th and graduate from there. But we went through that whole period of segregation. And I think about those days because at that time also, I guess I had a few leadership skills. I was president of the Black students at Dunbar. And I remember how we used to later on in life go to school board meetings and tell them that we wanted just what all of the other schools had. We didn't have a junior high. It was just the primary first through the sixth grade at that time. And we went to Safford Junior High School over on South 6th Avenue. That's where many of the Black students in those early days graduated from Safford. And we used to have our graduation services at Safford. We did not have a auditorium or anything of that sort. So Safford was kind of like our chosen school. And at least it was one that was open for all of our big affairs. And it worked out well. And we finally knew that one of these days it had to be different. But while we were in it, we enjoyed it and did it and just did not complain. So then in Dunbar, I guess I was kind of one of those who took education seriously because I found out in the early elementary days, I was president of the little student body, and then I was president of the student body at Dunbar. And I never thought that, 15 or more years later, that I would come back and would teach at Dunbar. And I did. I remember we had one of our famous Black oh, singers that came, and we have a big sign in a hallway at Dunbar where she signed it and said that she had visited. And right now, her name eludes me, but that was just a big, big day when she took time to come and visit all the Black students at Dunbar School. Anyway, from Dunbar, and whoever would have thought that after spending the 9 years at Dunbar, the 3 years at Tucson High, and then graduating with 4 degrees from the University of Arizona, that I would come back and teach at Dunbar. And that did happen. Taught the fourth grade over there, and because I had had a lot of experiences with traveling since Dad was a SP, a Southern Pacific man, and would get us all of these passes. Because I think I mentioned that I had gone to Europe a number of times, and even I had a cousin by the name of Arthur, and his stage name was Chico San, and he was my auntie's son. And while he was in the service, somehow got hung up with some people in the field of acting and all of that kind of thing. And he was well known throughout the country with his acting. And as I said, his acting name was Chico San. He spoke 10 different languages. Yes, I cannot believe that Arthur did that. Little boy that was born right next door to me on Anita Street. And he became really world famous in his field there, and was asked to do things and speak places and the whole 9 yards. But anyway, Arthur and I were bounded by the hip. He loved his Aunt Laura, his cousin Laura, even though his sister and I were just 3 days apart. But Myrtle was not an organizational person, and she married early, and had a big family that all did well. I didn't marry until much, much later, and then never did have any children. I had a hysterectomy early, and I said, that's fine because I'll just use all my energy for helping to take care of other people's children. And that's what I have done throughout my life. And even right now, I get letters from students that I have and their children that said, Mom has told us about you, Mrs. Reed. They still call me Miss Banks, and how you encourage them because they said that I instilled in them the will that you can do it. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do it. You can do it. You have a brain, and the field is open, and you have to take advantage of all the opportunities that are presented. And we did. And I think I talked to many, many young people. In fact, right now, a lot of them tell me, you know what? You got me started on the road where I am. And this is some judges and all of that kind of thing. So it makes you feel good that you've had an influence on someone's life when they have succeeded. And that's what makes me feel really, really grateful. And then my life uh, has had so many twists and turns. I'm just not sure which way to start going because I have been lucky enough to have been the first Black woman from Arizona to be on the YWCA National Board. And I remember we were in Houston, Texas for one of the big, big conventions that they had. And I was instrumental in getting the Black women that were at that convention together. And we met 2 or 3 times after regular meetings, and we presented to the YWCA National Board their new, and I can't think of what we call it, but it was like their new, um, what, it's what they go by right now, letting you know that women of all colors are open to the YWCA and all of the activities. And I ended up later on being on the YWCA National Board. Now that was really an accomplishment. I think I was the first Black woman in Arizona to have done that. And so I've tried to leave my mark wherever I have tread, and knowing that um, through me, that a lot of others can follow and even do more. But you got to take that first step. You can't be afraid. You can't feel that I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think I know enough. And if you don't, get in there and learn as you go along and make a difference. And I made sure that in their programs for the Y and a number of the other organizations, that they did not forget Black children. And then when I think about my educational experience, I think I was the first Black to be an assistant superintendent of schools, because before then they did not have assistant superintendents. And I was the first one that was hired to do that. I remember I had Region 4, and I think I had, let's see, 17 elementaries and 3 junior highs and 2 of the high schools. But I've always wanted to make a difference. And I wasn't doing it to get my name here or there. That I didn't ever even think of that part of it. But I just wanted to make the world that I lived in a little bit better place when I leave than while I was here. So that's kind of been my whole uh, major thought and kind of thesis as I've gone through life. I remember when I started at the University of Arizona, and oh gosh, Blacks weren't in anything hardly. And I, I was majoring in physical education. I was the first one to Black to major in physical education there under Ina Giddings. And we couldn't go in the swimming pool at the University of Arizona. And I told Miss Giddings, I said, and then I was majoring. I had two majors, one elementary education and one in physical education. And I said, but you know what? Uh, I can't take care of my message part in swimming because they do not allow us blacks to go in the pool at the University of Arizona. She said, what? And Ina Giddings, Dr. Ina Giddings, who was in charge of the women's physical education department at that time, did not know that. And I told my mother, and the two of us went and had a session with Dr. Giddings, and she said that she did not realize this herself. And she said it was an eye opener. And we went out to the pool. I will never forget that day. Ina Giddings, my mother, and myself went out to the pool at the University of Arizona. And Mrs. Giddings called some of the girls up to the end of the pool. And she said, I'm hearing something that I did not know existed in my own department. And they said, what? That that black students, black girls are not allowed in this pool. They said, oh my gosh, Laura, we all know and love Laura, and she could come in here and anything. I said, but it seems that that was a message that has been around. And they said, oh, no problem. But I I was the one that desegregated the swimming pool for women at the University of Arizona because before then, those who even they were majoring in physical ed were not allowed to do their methods course there. And my mother went with me and she said, you know, Miss Giddings, Laura is majoring in physical ed. This is what she's got. She has a double major, elementary, but she wants this extra major in physical ed. And she can't even go in the pool. And as a person who's majoring in physical, you didn't get in there to swim. You sat on the side of the pool and you gave the orders and this, that, and the other in order to fulfill your obligations. But I'm going to take credit for that because I actually was the one that got that started many, many years ago. And then I should double back to Tucson High School because we only had the one home room there, Miss Heath. I remember her just a loving, loving woman, white woman that had a double chin, and we used to behind her back say, Miss Heaton, that double chin, but she loves us. And she did, and she always spoke up for her Black students. But all the students, the first period of the day at Tucson High, you went to your homeroom and got all the announcements and all the other information that was important. And I don't care whether you were a freshman, sophomore, or a senior, whatever you were. Some of them, the white or the Mexican or Latino children, had different homerooms. But if you were Black, everyone went to Miss Heath's homeroom. And but she loved us, and she was sure that we knew everything that was going on at that campus. And I was president of the homeroom group for two different times. And I said, no, wait a minute, let's pass this around. We have some other leaders here, but I guess I showed leadership skills and they were taking advantage of it. And that's okay. It's helped to make me the woman that I am today. And I hope that I've touched someone's life to make them have a better life than it has not been in vain. So then I entered the University of Arizona, and uh, it was segregated. And I remember some of the classes that I attended. I sat way in the back of the room. I remember in one of the auditoriums that I had a seat way at the back on the top shelf, top, oh gosh, stairway there. And but it didn't last long. It didn't last long. I let them know that this is some of what I've had to deal with my life, and I don't want to deal with it here. And so here again, Missouri Nobles, who she was a gosh, when I think of her, she just didn't let any grass grow under her feet when something needed to be changed for the good. And we went to and talked with Miss Giddings and all about that, and there were changes that were made. So when I think of people who have had a real influence on my life, it definitely was my mother, who only had a fourth grade education, but she was so smart in everything, worldly things. And she raised 10 children, 10 children, and almost all of us had done well. I think out of all the children that mother had, I believe I am the only one that is alive today. Yes, I am the only one that's alive today. But anyway, we all, tried to make a contribution. She had three girls. Pearl, who was my older sister, and she was a freshman at the university and became ill and passed in her freshman year. And then I went on and got 4 degrees from the University of Arizona. And my other sister, Rosalie, who was my middle sister, didn't want to go to college. She wanted to be a beautician. And so my mother sent her to Phoenix, Arizona. There was a company there that was well known throughout for being one of the top beauty schools in the Southwest. And so Rosalie was able to attend school, and I can't think of the name of it, but that's where she got her uh, hairdressing experience from. And then she came back to Tucson, and she worked at a number of white beauty shops. At first, just doing shampoos and things, and then until she finally decided that she's going to open up a shop of her own. And she did that for years and encouraged a lot of other young people, excuse me, who were interested in that kind of uh, not, I was about to say sport, it's not kind of job. So she made her contributions as well. Now I'm trying to think of what have I left off. I've just kind of skipped around. Do you want to ask me any questions, or is that a possibility? Oh, Mary and Jack. My goodness. I see on my little screen. Can you speak about your life? Well, I tell you, I was the head of the hostesses when a number World War II came and had all of those fine young soldiers. Ooh, those were some of the fun days of my life, let me tell you, because I was president of the USO Hostesses, and that building is still over there on 12th Avenue, right across from the park. But I was president of the USO Hostesses on two different occasions, and we were there to be the dance partners for the Davis Mountain and also for the Fort Huachuca soldiers. And boy, those were some really fine days. In fact, the man that I finally married was Eugene Reed, and he was one of those that used to come to the USO right on where they called it the 12th Avenue USO. And the building is still there. I don't know. I don't think it's being used for anything. I have not noticed it when I've gone to Tucson for my visits. But many happy returns of the day from the 12th Avenue USO. And we had dances and hay rides and oh gosh, things that you don't hear about anymore. And just days are gone but not forgotten. Let's just put it that way. Because I finally ended up marrying Gene after he had gotten out of the service, and I, of course, went and finished my schooling and became a teacher and this, that, and the other. And almost 15 years or more later, and I am trying to think of the circumstances. And he had gotten married and had had children. I had been married to Jack and all. But when I'm trying to think of the incident when the two of us were able to see each other again. And it was just like he had gone on a furlough and had come back home to Laura. I said, oh my gosh, handsome as he could be. And we started dating. And because I was president of the USO Hostesses, and he had been one of the soldiers that came from Fort Huachuca down there. And we started dating, and we dated for almost pretty close to a year. And finally said, you know what? God has brought you back to me. And we finally got married, and we were married for, I think, 10 or 11 years. The most gentle, and he was handsome as all get out, too. We really enjoyed our married life. And I got to meet his sister, and they both came and visited me here, right here in Helotes, where I am now. And both of them are deceased, and God still has me here telling the story. But, God has been so good to me, so good to me. He's opened so many doors for me. And when I open those doors for others, when I get there, I see to it that the door, my foot is in the door, so another Black person can get in and enjoy some of the benefits of this because we deserve it. We've been pushed back for so long. And I remember when I was president of the NAACP for Tucson, uh, and some of the things that we got done. I was president when we got uh, all of the restaurants to open their doors. I'm trying to think of what that law was called, but I was president and I was in charge of when I got groups, and I got other groups beside our NACP to join with us to go to the city council and do all the things we needed to. And the end result is that Blacks could go and sit anywhere rather than getting your food. I remember many days that I went to the back door of El Charro to get my Mexican food. And now Carlotta Flores is one of my closest and dearest friends. She would just do anything in the world for me. She loves me dearly and does whatever she can that she thinks will make me happy. But it was her auntie that was a racist. And she said that no Blacks come in here. And if you wanted any really good Mexican food, Blacks had to go to the back door. And at that time, El Charro was on Broadway, West Broadway, and we had to do it. But Carlotta, who is her goddaughter, she said, Laura, when I think of those days, my heart is so heavy that that could have happened. She said, but now that I'm in charge of El Charro, everybody is welcome. And that's what she's done. And she and I have remained really good friends throughout the years. So I'm just trying to think of what other, I'm thinking about my time with the YWCA. And I was one of the first to be elected to go to to be a member of the YWCA National Board. And I remember we were having a convention in Houston, Texas, when all of the Black delegates there got together. And we were the ones that came up with the statement, and I can't think of what we called the statement, and presented it to the YWCA National Board that Black women should be included in everything. And there's a little statement, I just can't think of it at the moment, but we were part of that group that got that going. And so now, whatever the YWCA does, Black women are really welcome, and they should have been years ago. Let me see what else has been really exciting in my life, my school career, many of the boards that I have been on that never had a Black woman or a Black period on it. My travels, as I said, I've been to Africa 3 different times. And I even went when the AKAs had meetings in Africa on 2 different occasions. So I'm really proud of that. And then because I am an organizational person, I was able to go with a lot of our leaders. I got to know Dorothy, oh gosh, she's the national president of the National Council of Negro Women and national president of the Delta. She and I got to be almost bosom buddies. Dorothy, oh my gosh, can you think of her name? Uh, it's on the tip of my tongue and I can just see her face and can't call. Dorothy Height. Dorothy Height. Yes, she's the one. And she just took me under her arms as well. And she said, oh, oh, I just love your attitude and your background and what you have done to help move Black women forward. I said, I think that's my mission in life is to do that as long as I live. So, all right, I have to mention to you a very important part of my life. When I was born on Anita Street near Speedway and used to go to Speedway and Anita right across the tracks, across the bridge, there was a lady by the name of Mrs. White, and she owned a barbecue restaurant there. And that was when I was a kid. I had no idea that when I grew up, that I was going to own that corner where Mrs. White had that barbecue place. But she did, and was one of our early owners, restaurant owners. And on a Saturday, she had a great big cement slab behind that building. And that's where the young people every Saturday night ended up partying and dancing, jitterbugging on the cement slab behind Mrs. White's barbecue. And then 30 years later, Jack and I bought that whole barbecue business and that corner and kept her business going. And it was called Jack's Across the Tracks. So many, many memories of Tucson. It shall always be an integral part of my life. Yes. Okay. All right. I need to talk just a wee bit about my spiritual life because I've always considered myself a good Christian. Loved the Lord, and Mother taught us early on. We were at Sunday school every Sunday, BTU, they used to call it Bible Training Union or Baptist Young People's Union. And that was part of our life. We knew what Sundays were going to be like. And they have had an integral part of me growing up as a Christian woman. So Mother has always been active in the church. She was part of this organization, that organization, founded another organization. She was an organizational person. So that's where I get part of that from. And then I just kept it going because I believed in what they were doing. And so at Mount Calvary, oh gosh, I was with the Red Circle Girls, the I'm trying to think of the women that were with oh gosh, what was the group of women that had their training sessions and all of that. Isn't that awful? It's just, but anyway, I used to go to those kind of meetings. Gosh, that's, and as long as I went, I don't think I'd ever forget it. But anyway, I got a lot of my early training in church and being how to be a Christian through that. And then I was always active in the Sunday school, and we called it Baptist Training Union. For a while, it used to be the BYPU, and then it became the BTU. And Mother saw to it that we were active in all the things that gave us a good Christian and a religious background. And it has stuck with me because I consider myself a child of the King. And I say often, I said, God, you just stood by me through many trials and tribulations. You've never left me alone. And that's because you love me and you helped me to be the woman that I am today. But I was very active with the Baptist Training Union, which was the evening services, and then with Sunday school, which was, of course, the morning service. I was a part of the missionary circle. I was never part of the group women. Well, they have the, oh gosh, the deacons and the deacons' wives. So I was not at that level, but I was at the other level that did a lot of training and different kind of support groups that helped to keep Mount Calvary going. And I was baptized in Mount. Actually, the story of my baptism is most people do not know it. I got baptized. I mean, I found the Lord in Port Arthur, Texas, right here in Texas. And nobody, hardly anybody knows that. Mother used to travel, and we had a group. Well, we used to hire, I have um, rentals. And one of the gentlemen that rented one of our apartments was from Port Arthur, Texas. And he must have had tuberculosis because we owned 3 apartments and we usually rented it out to a lot of the people that came there for health reasons. And our house was the driveway, and then our house was over from that. And so I met the man, one of the men that owned, that rented from us was from Port Arthur, Texas. And we used to talk and all, and got to really be close, and met his wife and his family. And we told them one of these days that we were going to visit them in Port Arthur. And we did. And I remember very, very distinctly that one Sunday after, was it Sunday afternoon? I don't know, but we went to their church. And I was sitting on the front porch, and a big thunderstorm. My sister always tries to make me look bad about this, because I was on the front porch there, because I would go there and sit out on the front porch. They had a big swing, and I would pray and all. And she tells everybody that I found the Lord, because that Sunday that I was sitting on the front porch, there was a lot of lightning and thundering. I said, Rosalie, don't be telling people that. That is, she said, well, when you went out there to sit and do whatever you were doing, when you came back, you said, you know what? I believe that I have found the Lord, and I am going to be a Christian. That's what you came back in the house saying. So she said, I think that what did that is because while you were sitting on that front porch, there was a lightning and thunderstorm, and because you were frightened. And so you were calling on the Lord. I said, don't you be telling people that, but I'm telling you now so the world knows it. But God came to me while I was sitting off that front porch swinging. And almost every home I recall that I visited here in Texas at that time had a porch, a swing on their front porch. And the people that we were stopping with did. And I used to go out there and sit on that swing and pray and all of that kind of thing. But that's the story that they tell about me finding the Lord, because it was a lightning and thundering storm, and I was out on that front porch frightened. But that's not true. Yes. Okay. And then I joined church there and came back. I was not baptized until I came back. And I've always been a member of Mount Calvary, and I've been a member of their Sunday school. We used to call it BYPU, which was the afternoon. And Mother saw to it that we were part of that from early childhood right on up through when I would say almost grown. And so that's where I got most of my religious background, my faith and the Bible and all, because I studied it all the time through the Sunday school and the BYPU. Yeah. But anyway, and so I attended the old Mount Calvary. I remember when we used to go down in the basement for all of our social events. And then I was there when they remodeled it and all. And then I went to the on 6th Avenue where it is now. I was there when they dedicated there, because half of my life is part of Mount Calvary Baptist Church, Tucson, Arizona. Yes, that's where I found the Lord, and God has been good to me.